Well, we are in a series called Summer of Hope, and hopefully you got a handout when you came in so you can fill in the blanks and make sure that you can remember later what we've talked about. Anybody need one? I think somebody has some. Anybody need a handout? All right. Somebody did a good job. Either that or you don't want them. One or the other. But in this series, we are defining hope as that which brings action to our faith. It says, not only do I believe God can, but I believe God will. Is that one up there? Whoop, there you go. Not only do I believe God can, but I believe God will. Now, this isn't based on wishful thinking, but because we've listened to God and we either know the direction He is asking us to take, or we know the promise that He is making to our lives. Now, we've been using the book, The Hope Quotient, HQ by Ray Johnson, as our guide in this series. And he says there in the book that there are 7 factors that can help us raise our ability to have hope. 2 weeks ago, we saw the first of those factors, and that is that we need to recharge our batteries. Now, if you missed it, you can go back and watch those videos. They are on our Facebook page, but they're a little bit harder to find there. They're also on our YouTube page. You can get to them very easily from our website or through our church app. Either one of those will take you directly to them. And so if you need to catch up. I think there's some good stuff that's there, and it helps us as we're moving forward in this. This week, we're going to turn our attention to the second factor, which is we need to raise our expectations, or raise your expectations. Now, before we get into that, we do have to turn to our tank here. Isn't this a nice tank? Somebody said it's big enough to see if a baby can float. Each week we're taking a little moment and looking at some things and asking ourselves, will it float or will it not float? There's a reason for that, and we'll get to that in a moment. Drew's supposed to be helping me, but he is working today and not able to be with us. I wish he was here so I didn't have to do this. We don't know. No, it's just the fact that we don't try these beforehand. And so I'm never sure what's going to happen. I'm trying to figure out which one. I might as well go ahead and do it from the beginning. Right here at the front, I have a bowling ball. I am not sure what is going to happen. I'm hoping it will, if it sinks, I'm hoping it will sink gently so that it doesn't get really wet here. Who's tall? Come here, Zach. I'm going to let you put this in there and try to sort of let it go slowly, not all the way to the bottom. How many of you think it'll float? How many of you think it will not float? All right, let's try it. Gently let it go down in there. And let's see. It did not float. All right. So what do we think about this one? Will this one float? Will it sink? You want to try it?
Sure.
All right.
I'm going to guess this one will also sink.
Oh, the watermelon actually floated. All right. At camp, it was interesting this week because every week the activity director at camp takes these little ducks and puts them around, and the kids find them. And this year he thought it'd be fun to also have some mini Jesuses, and they were worth more than the ducks. What one of the ladies there did not catch on to that fact, and she had brought 200 of these with her. And so she was putting them everywhere, and he wondered why so many people were bringing these little Jesuses to him. He had not put that many out. And sort of a miscommunication. We're going to find out, how many of you think Jesus will float? mean, he'll walk on top, right? No, Jesus did not. Not the mini Jesus, anyway. I've got one other item. I made a boat. How many of you think my boat will float? How many of you say no? All right, we're going to find out. Hey, it floated. Now, just for fun, did I lose him? I can't lose Jesus. I got to have Jesus. I've got an extra one. Let's see if Jesus can float in the boat. There we go. I think Jesus is asleep in the boat, but there's no storm this time. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate it. We'll get them out later. I think they'll be okay for now because you're going to get water everywhere getting them out. Now, the reason we do that is because we want you to think. In your life, do you float or do you sink? When the troubles come your way, do you rise above them like the watermelon or do you just go straight down like the bowling ball? Which one happens in your life? So each week we're going to look together at a story as well from either 1st or 2nd Samuel. And so today, would you stand with me? We're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 16. We're going to read verse 1 through 13. Let me just set the scene. Again, in the previous two stories, we've seen Jonathan. Jonathan, a young man full of faith and hope. And we saw the amazing things Jonathan was able to do because of his faith and his hope in God. If only his father, King Saul, had been like him, Jonathan would have been king. But Saul wasn't that way. Saul was the very first king of Israel, and being king went to his head, and he began to think he could do whatever he pleased. It was okay. But God had placed him on the throne as king. And if God put him on the throne as king, God could remove him as well. And that brings us to our passage, 1 Samuel 16, verses 1 through 13. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, since I've rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." But Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me." The Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, 'I've come to sacrifice to the Lord.' Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate." Samuel did what the Lord said. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him. They asked, "Do you come in peace?" Samuel replied, "Yes, in peace. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me." Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Jesse then had Shammah pass by, but Samuel said, "Nor has the Lord chosen this one." Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to him, "The Lord has not chosen these." So he asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" "They're still the youngest," Jesse answered. "He is tending the sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." So he sent for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Samuel then went to Ramah. This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. So God wants Samuel to anoint one of Jesse's sons to be the next king of Israel. But 7 sons pass by, and God says none of those 7 were the one. There was only one left. He was the youngest. The ancient historian Josephus says that David was thought to be around 10 years old at this time. The reason he was with the sheep was he was the least of all the sons of Jesse. He was the youngest, the least likely to be chosen as king, so they didn't even bring him in. But I love verse 7 there. Let me read that to you again. Love that passage. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Here's the next thing I want you to write down. It does not matter the opinion others have about your life. What matters is God's opinion of you. So important. If God sees in you the next king of Israel, then you have what it takes to be the next king of Israel. You know, it would be a long time, though, before David became king. After he was anointed by Samuel that day, it would be 20 years before he became king just of the tribe of Judah. One of the 12 tribes, it would be 20 years. It would not be for another 7 years before David became king of all the tribes of Israel. That's a long time to wait, isn't it? But you know what? During all that time, he still believed it was going to happen. Could you imagine growing up believing that you were going to be the next king? You didn't know when, you just knew that it was going to happen. So let me ask you a question. What do you believe is in your future? Or better yet, what is God telling you is in your future? Now, I know that most of us are a little older than 10. But that doesn't mean that at my advanced age of 60 years old, that I cannot believe that God still has amazing things in store for my future. Do you believe that in your life? Perhaps you're having trouble because others do not see much when they look at you. But as I said a moment ago, it doesn't matter what they think. It matters what God says to you. So with that background, we're going to turn to our second factor today, which is raising our ability to have hope, and that is to raise your expectations. We need to raise our expectations. When you look at the future, are you an optimist or a pessimist? You say, Pastor, I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist. That's it. But let's think about it for a moment. Do you look at situations and see why things cannot happen? Or do you look at things and begin to figure out how they might actually happen? Well, most of the time we don't see things become reality because we lack the faith to believe they actually will happen. And without hope, we take no action. A few years ago when I pastored in North Carolina, we were bringing children and teenagers from a big trailer park, and we sat down in a board meeting one time and we started talking about, now, what do we need to build here so that we can better minister to the kids coming from that trailer park? Sometimes we were running 2 vans to get them all there, and let me tell you, about 2 vans, I'm not talking about 15 in a van. Some of our drivers weren't very legal sometimes. And we're sitting there in the meeting, and they're talking about that. And all of a sudden, it's like, but wait a minute. Why bring them here other than church? You know, still bring them on Sundays and Wednesday nights. But during the week, what if we go to them where they are? And one of the ladies knew the owner of the trailer park, sort of, kind of. And she said, well, I'll go to them and ask them if they will rent a trailer to us. Well, that sounded like a good idea. But I said, you know what, Diane, don't ask them how much to rent one. Just ask them if they will donate one to us. Well, she did. She went and asked them that, and they said, sure, we'll donate one. Right there in the center of the trailer park, we walked in, and it was a mess. And we started figuring out what we were going to have to do with carpeting and walls, holes in the wall and all this stuff, what we were going to do to get it ready. And they said, oh, no, you don't understand. We're going to fix the walls, repaint, put new flooring. We're going to get it ready for you. It's not going to cost you anything. Isn't it amazing what God can do? I like stories like that. You know, if I hadn't imagined it was possible and she hadn't been willing to ask, we never would have had that trailer out there. I can share with you many other stories like that. I shared one this week at camp. Go ahead and put that picture up. I shared with the kids about Cuba at camp. It was fun. Unfortunately, our kids had to go first. I only had to do the lesson 12 times. It was so much more fun by the end than it was at the beginning. But I showed them this picture from Cuba. That's a church being built there in the background. I'll look this way so my hand motions mean something to you. There's a church being built in the background. No congregation yet, because for the church to be recognized in Cuba, you got to have a building before you can be recognized as a church. And so I asked, we had brought the Jesus film equipment with us, the projector, the screen, the speakers, all that. And I asked the Cuban taking us around if we could do this, if we could show the Jesus film out in front of the church. And he said, no. You got to understand, in Cuba, that's not legal. You can go to church, and all the people can cram into the church that you can cram into the church. That's legal. Just understand there's a spy there listening and taking names and all of that. But out in public, adults can't meet together. It's not allowed. And he said, no, that won't happen. I said, would you mind asking the leader, whoever you need to talk to? And he did. He went to them and he said, can we do that? And they said, yeah. Just no Americans can invite people. And so Cubans went door to door, invited people. Several, as you can see, showed up. Several prayed to accept Christ. One lady right beside the church, her house was right there. She accepted Christ, and she said, would y'all please start a Bible study in my house? So now they had a place for a Bible study to get ready for a congregation when the church building was completed. God did that. God made a way. But it never would have happened if we hadn't imagined that it could and believed enough to actually take the steps necessary to make it happen. So tell me which describes your life. Next thing to fill in there on your thing. Which describes you? You attempt things others think impossible. Or you do not try things when people tell you it is not possible. Check one of those. Which one describes you? You attempt things others think impossible, or you do not try things when people tell you it is not possible. The first option is the one that puts us in a position to see God do amazing things. That's what it takes to see the amazing things God's going to do. Now, if you want to be more like that, Ray Johnson gives us 5 attitudes or actions that could help you to become a person who expects great things. First one is this: believe impossible things are possible. It all begins with faith. Do you believe our God can do miracles? Do you believe that? One of the saddest verses in the Bible is Matthew 13, verse 58. It says, and he did not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith. Jesus is going all over the place doing all these miracles. He goes back to his hometown. He goes back to his own people, his people. And he can't do anything because they lack faith to believe that things will happen. If you want to see things happen, then it begins with faith. And maybe we need to pray that God will increase our faith. Number 2, believe God has better days ahead. Too many people give up hope and believe that what they're experiencing now is all they will ever experience in life. David could have very easily believed, I'm a shepherd boy, I'm always going to be a shepherd boy. That's just my destiny in life. But then as you continue to read his story, for several years, most of that 27 years, he is running, he is hiding, he is fighting for his life. King Saul wants to kill him. And later, others are out to kill him. And it would be so easy for him to give up and say, it is never going to happen. When we begin to believe that what we're experiencing now is all we will ever experience in life, then we give up trying. I've met many people like that through the years. They quit believing they could actually break a habit. They quit believing they could get a job. They quit believing their marriage could be better. They quit believing anyone could truly love them. They quit believing God has a purpose and plan for their life. And because they no longer believe it's possible, they quit trying. And because they quit trying, they never break the habit. They never get a job. Their marriage does not improve. They never discover the love of another. They never discover the purpose or plan God has for their life. But listen to John chapter 10, verse 10. John 10:10 says this, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. That's his promise. It's never too late for God to do a new thing in our lives. Number 3, realize the power of perspective. Too many people look at their circumstances and say, if only things were different, I could. You know, if this had not happened, if I had this, if only the circumstances were different, I could. That means they let their circumstances define what they believe the future will hold for them. But our present circumstances do not determine our future opportunities. God is greater than our circumstances. David was just a shepherd. But he did not believe that his life was limited to what he was then. Along the way, again, David could have given up hope many times of being king. But he never gave up hope on what could be due to the circumstances. But he knew what God had anointed him for. In Matthew chapter 9, verse 20 through 22, Matthew 9, 20 through 22, we read the story of a lady who could have given up. 12 years she suffered. 12 years. It would have been so easy to give up. But we read there in Matthew 9, 20 through 22, just then a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. She said to herself, if only I touch his cloak, I will be healed. Jesus turned and saw her. Take heart, daughter, he said. Your faith has healed you. And the woman was healed at that moment. Oh, she could have given up. The doctors had tried. She was out of money. She could have given up. But instead of giving up, she turned to Jesus. And she found healing. Number 4, replace fear with faith. Replace fear with faith. One of the greatest stories of David's life came before he ever wore the crown. We find the story in 1 Samuel chapter 17. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, Israel is facing the Philistines and their champion, a giant named Goliath. As we read this story, we see that every soldier under King Saul was held back by fear. No one would face Goliath. He was a giant. He was too powerful. But then along comes a shepherd boy full of faith. He doesn't let the giant intimidate him. Why? Because he believes in what his God can do. In 1 Samuel 17, verse 45 through 46, we read, David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. If we don't have that kind of faith, then we need to humbly cry out to God to give us that kind of faith. Number 5, replace what if with why not? I want to remind you that hope comes from listening to God. We're not talking about wishful thinking. We're not talking about the power of positive thinking. We're talking about knowing God's will for our life, listening to Him and His direction and His promises. When God places something on our heart, do we just dream of what might be? Or do we actually begin to take steps to make that thing possible? See, real faith leads to action. It's not held back by, well, what if it doesn't work? What if something goes wrong? Until we actually step out in faith, many doors are never going to open. When we lived in Alabama, my wife Tammy was in prison. She went to prison every day for work. She worked in the clinic there as a physician's assistant. And there was something interesting in the prison. Every time she walked up to a door, she would just walk up to the door, stand there, and the door would open. And she would walk through. She got to like that. The problem with that is sometimes she would forget that she wasn't at the prison. And you know, at Walmart, it's okay. You walk up to the door and it opens. But other doors, she would walk up to other doors and she would stand there and she would wait for them to open, sometimes for a few seconds before it dawned on her, I'm not at the prison. This door is not going to open. I'm going to have to turn the knob and I'm going to have to push or pull that door if I'm going to walk through that door. If we're going to see what God is promising us, instead of just standing around and waiting, maybe it's time to actually turn the knob and push the door open. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 7 through 8, Matthew 7, 7 through 8, we read this. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and the one who knocks, the door will be opened. But it's up to us to turn the knob and walk on through. David turned the knob and he became king of Israel. We asked for a trailer in a trailer park, and they gave us one. A Cuban guide asked if we could show a film. It wasn't legal, but he asked. And we did. And many came to believe in Jesus. What knobs are you turning? What doors are you pushing on as God leads in your life? Are you imagining the future? It could be even greater than we imagine. Remember, we started earlier today with Ephesians 3:20. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. Do you believe that? Then let's start turning knobs and watching doors open as we follow where God is leading. So each week I'm going to give you a couple of things to work on. This week I've got 2 of them, 2 questions for you to ask yourself later as you get a chance. And I encourage you, fill these out because it makes it concrete. Number 1, are you listening to God? Or as you are listening to God, what future is He trying to get you to imagine? Think about that for a moment. As you are listening to God, I told you there's a lot of listening involved in hope. as you are listening to God, what future is He trying to get you to imagine? And number two, what steps would God have you to take to see the plan of God become reality in your life? What steps would God have you to take to see the plan of God become reality in your life? For David, it was sort of simple. His goal was stay alive until it's time to be king. Whatever it takes, stay alive, be faithful to God, and it will happen. No matter what, don't give up. Here's the thing, God hasn't given up.